are a few more things that I need to mention before we actually dive right in there to the templates. And that has to do with needles and thread. And so we want to discuss just a little bit about that so that you won't make some of the mistakes that, like I said, I have made in the past. Now, one of the things I'm finding interesting as I'm watching some of the comments, so you've heard it here first. I think when you're doing your quilting, especially as a beginner, you're going to want to use the 90 top stitch needle. Okay, you're going to want to use that 90 top stitch needle because I recommend that when you first get started, you use what I would call all-purpose weight thread and use polyester. Okay. Now, some people say, well, I was taught that I can't put polyester thread in cotton, and quilting fabric is cotton. That's kind of like an old wives' tale, because realistically, your fabric doesn't go, oh, that feels funny here. So you want to make sure the polyester for beginners is much better because it's not going to break as easily. And when you first get started, you're a little more jerky than you intend to be. And that's just something that's going to make it easier. So 40 weight or 50 weight is what we would call all purpose. Now, some of you out there are probably have sewn in 50, 60 years like I have. And you're just like, well, when I started, all we had was really all purpose. And, then we had maybe buttonhole thread and heavy duty thread, and then probably quilting thread. Now there are so many threads. It's like unbelievable, all the different threads you can use. So when you start, you can use a quilting thread. The one I have is a signature thread, and it's a variegated, and it's 40 weight. As you get going, you might become the world's best teensy tiny quilter. In other words, you're going to love to use our mini templates, and you're going to probably want a little finer thread. You can find the finer threads, and you can go down in the size of your needle, but don't start with that. You want to start with just a 40 or 50 weight thread. Now, interestingly enough, the bigger the numbers get in thread, such as an 80 weight, which there are a lot of quilters that quilt with 80 weight, that thread is smaller, and the needle needs to be smaller, such as a 65, a 70, a 75, because you have a finer thread. So unfortunately, the numbering in threads is opposite the number of needles. So on needles, as the number gets bigger, the hole gets bigger. That makes sense to me. But in thread, as the number gets bigger, it gets finer. So just remember those two things. Now, I was talking about a 90 top stitch needle, and I just happen to have a super giant needle here, so I can show you these things. You probably are aware that needles have a groove in the front, and that's for the thread to ride down. And that's why it's so ever important to have the right size needle with your thread, because that thread has to fit in this groove, but not have a groove that's so big it doesn't hug either side. You want to make it so it's fitting right in there, nice, and it's kind of like a channel that hugs the thread. It's not going to actually touch it, but it's going to get closer than if you had a larger channel. Now, this is what we call the eye, the point. We know that. But I want you to see the difference in needles here. When you go down through here, you're going to want to use that top stitch needle because of that extra space. You can see it in all of these needles. Okay, the universal will be just fine. That's what I also use for embroidery. And the embroidery needle is this right here, is also fine. They're very similar. But when we're using our templates, we want to use the top stitch needle. Now on the back, you'll notice this is what's called a scarf. that's where your hook comes around and takes the thread that's coming down from the needle and goes around to the bottom and makes a stitch. So that scarf right there is different sizes too. And if you don't have a compatible thread on the bottom, you're going to have some issues. So I recommend that you use either the same thread or one that's compatible in size, so everything happens to go together right here on the back. So if you just thought, y'all just put in a needle and start, I would recommend that you'd wait until you have a top stitch needle. Now I'm sewing today on a Janome, and Janome has what's equivalent to the top stitch needle, size and everything, but it's what's called the purple needle. And sometimes it's more of a magenta in color. But if you ever hear anybody say, I use a purple tip needle, it's not like the tip is purple, but the top is. Now, last but not least, when you change your needle, make sure you open the screw, but don't take it out, but open the screw enough to get the needle up high enough into that opening where it's supposed to go. Because if you don't, and it's down a little bit, let's say you were sewing with a 75 and then you went to this, you're not going to have a stitch that forms. You're going to have breaking, you're going to have skipping, you're going to have all different kinds of things because this is not up there high enough. As a needle gets larger in size, this gets larger. This is the shank, and that gets larger also. So that's about needles. Now, when you have your thread, your needles, and all of that ready to go, we are then ready for talking about the foot. Now, the foot, we've come a long way, let's just say, in probably about 8 years, because when we started, these were the 4 feet that were available. None of the machine companies had their own foot. Well, now several of the companies have their own foot. And here's the difference. I'm going to show you. These are our feet, Wesley's feet. There's one right there. This happens to be a high shank. You can see it looks like that, only smaller. And then this is one from the company for my high shank machine. And you'll notice that there's not that long space. That's because when this foot was made, the manufacturer of the foot knew it was going on this particular machine. It was made specific for this machine. So no up and down adjustment would be needed. On this one, there might be 2,000 or 3,000 different brands of machines that use this same foot because we have all of the options of where we tighten it onto the shank. And I'm going to show you how easy that can be, because this is kind of the scary part. If you don't get it right, you're not going to have success. And I want you to get out there sewing. So this is low shank, medium shank. This is the only thing that's medium in our whole line. There are no templates. There's nothing else that's medium. This fits some of those machines that have kind of what they call a mezzanine position, and they need more space than this and not enough space here. So a lot of the FOFs for sure take this particular foot. All of the feet are the same in this right here. This one and this one are both high shank, but this is called high shank special. And the reason it's called high shank special is because although this is correct, this side of this little arm needed to be longer than this one so that the needle can come right straight down the middle on all of these feet. So if your machine needs a high shank, do not purchase a high shank special. Okay. Now, regarding our templates, let's talk about that right now. This is a low shank template. The medium foot takes low shank templates. The high shank takes high shank or low shank. You can use both. Therefore, if you had 2 machines, one's high, one's low, buy low shank templates. If you only have one, you're going to still want to get high shank templates, but you can use low on the high shank. And this one is the same way as this. It's high shank, but it could use a low. Now, many of you may have a Bernina machine that takes what is called the 72 foot. That 72 foot will use all three heights because it has a way to adjust. But it would be kind of crazy to buy the long arm templates if you don't have a long arm or a sit down machine, because they're heavier, they're bulky, and you don't need those. But if you had a long arm or a sit down quilter and you had the Bernina, you could buy long arm templates and use it on both of your machines. So I want to tell you that from the beginning. You're going to be able to access this information for a long, long time. And I want to make it so that you understand that you don't have to go out and buy 2 sets of this and 2 sets of that. Because guess what? When I first started, that's what I did. And I've got a lot of templates that I'll never use now because of the fact that I really don't need more than 1 set. So that's why I'm telling you that. Now, I'm going to take this screw out because I have to. I'm going to put it through this opening and I'm going to put it back in place. Now, if that screw doesn't go through there and latch on easily, look, I've already dropped it. Don't force it, because the last thing you want to have is a $300 repair because you forced a screw and stripped that needle bar. Now, when I get this on here, I'm just going to tighten it finger tight. And then I'm going to see that's staying right there. And then I'm going to back it off so it will still go up and down. Now, I was doing a decorative stitch when I finished. So I need to move my needle because it needs to be dead set in the center. So I'm going to do what I call go back to home, where it's going to be in the middle and set. There we go. It moved over. And then that way I've got it set. So when I get it exactly where I want it, my needle is going to be in the center. So you can see it still goes up and down. Now, when I set my machine for ruler work, and guess what? Ruler work is way different than free motion. So there's a difference on your machines. If you have a free motion setting, but not a ruler work setting, just set your machine for straight stitch and lower your feed teeth. You'll have much better results. And those of you that might have the Vikings, they have a beautiful feature of sensing the height of your fabric, no matter where it's at. But that's not good for what we're doing. And so you would want to make sure you turn off that auto sensor. And unless you have a Brilliance or an Epic, any of the 3 Epics or whatever number there are Brilliances, those have ruler work settings. But you're going to want to use, if you have the diamonds, the rubies, all the gem machines, you're going to want to just set it for straight stitch, lower your feed teeth manually, and you probably have a setting for it. And then you will be able to turn off that auto sensor foot so it's not sensing that, and you will have no problem at all. If you have trouble with that, shoot me an email, contact So Steady and ask them for my email. It's on there for the educators, so you can find it, and I'll help you get that straightened around.
And Donna, we did have a couple questions.
Yes.
And they go back a little bit. One is, how often do you suggest changing your needle?
The best thing I can tell you is you will know on that too. They say every 9 to 10 hours of actual sewing, but I can tell you people who are measuring that are probably making a garment and they are not doing as much sewing as a person using a machine doing ruler work, because you are sewing a lot. When you start to hear a picking or you see needle break, or excuse me, thread breakage, you probably need to change that needle. Now it's funny because the other day in a class I mentioned I have a timeout for my needles. And so these are my timeout positions, and they all have different colors at the top. And the reason I say that is if I was using a different thread and I had that problem and I pulled my needle out, it may not be that it's a bad needle at this point. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to talk about it in a minute. When you have shredding a thread, that means that this, I might as well go ahead and talk about it now. That means that this eye is bad. And this is where all of the action is. Most people think it's here in the point, but it's actually right here, because as this thread comes down and turns to go through that hole, this is rounded right now. So at the top, it's not only rounded this way, it's rounded this way. But after this goes through here, that thread at the speed that it's going, even though it's super, super fine, will start to take some of the smoothness out of this edge, and it will get more to the point where it's got a sharper edge, and it will actually shred that thread. So if you've ever seen that little willy worm coming up the needle at you, that's what's happening. There's probably still a piece still going through here. You can give me some love if that's happened to you. But this right here, if that's happened, you're going to find that this goes right through there and has a little sliver of thread, but the rest of it's bunching up and coming up here. That means this needle is shot. It's done. It doesn't get to go to timeout. It gets to go away. And I just keep a little extra pill bottle, and I just keep those needles in there. When I get enough of them, I make sure I put them into like a sharps jar or something like that, so that they're not just put in the trash. So that will definitely make it so that you have a good needle going all the time. A lot of people will say that they, use a new needle for each quilt project. That's probably a good plan too. And since we're talking about this, let's just interject right now. Going forward, when you are piecing your quilt, in other words, you're putting the pieces together, you are going to want to use 60 weight thread. And I use a 60 weight thread. I guess I don't have, there it is. A 60 weight thread by Alex Anderson that's called Quilters Select. And this thread is super. I use it in the bobbin and the top. And the reason I do that is because a lighter weight thread will make for nice flat seams. I don't even pay attention to a scant quarter anymore because of using that 60 weight thread. It will make it so that when you're ready to do your quilting, you will be able to go right over all those seams and move on, and you won't have to stop and raise your foot and change the height and all of that kind of thing. So from now on, going forward, you can use this 60 weight thread. Now you might say, well, good grief, I've got all these 300 colors of thread right now and none of them are 60 weight. Well, just remember in piecing, you really only need like a cream, a white, maybe a gray. You don't need a bunch of different colors when you're piecing. So that will make a difference. Use a smaller needle. I usually use a 75 or an 80 for that. So you're going to, make sure you keep, that's why there's different colors over here. Make sure you keep track of what needles are what size and all of that going forward, but it will make a huge difference. So back to this. Okay, this is going up and down. I need to put my glider on. So this is important. I had a lady that once, she was buying like $300 worth of templates and tools and all that, but she wasn't going to get this. And I said, you might as well give me those products back because you're not going to have success. I've lined this up with my needle this way and going across this way. And I pretty much sew all the time because as you can see, my feed teeth can be exposed. Okay, your feed teeth can be exposed, and that way you're going to be able to sew, do regular sewing, whatever. And so this just makes all of this area, even though our tables are all custom cut. And I should say too, that when you order a table, all you got to do is tell them the make and model of your table. And the same thing with your machine to get your foot. You just need to tell Sew Steady the make and the model of your machine, and they'll be able to get your foot. So now that we've got all of that set up, let's get right to the fun. So I have got a quilt sandwich here. I've got batting, I've got backing, and I've got a topper. Now, I use black mainly because it shows up better for you, but this is where you can use some of that fabric that, you know, it's like, why did I buy it? Whatever. But I would encourage you to invest in some that is solid so that you can see it, especially as you're beginning. Now, what I'm going to do is come to this corner over here. And I am going to just put my fabric underneath there, and I'm going to set my foot down. Now, remember, this has not been tightened on there. So when I set it down, it's going to adjust to the height that it comes to. So I'm just going to put my foot down, make sure this is resting on my fabric. I'm going to take that screwdriver, and I recommend you get a longer one so that you can get in there and tighten it without disturbing your foot height. And I'm not putting it super tight yet because I'm not sure. And I'm going to make sure that this goes underneath there. I'm going to take the thread and put the needle down, bring the foot up, and bring the thread up. And I bring the thread up by just what I call flossing. So I go underneath there. There's my bobbin thread, same weight, different color, doesn't matter. And now I'm going to put my foot back down and my needle back down. Now, I haven't told you, but I'm not a free motioner. Never was. When they handed me the templates to play with, the first words on the template package were free motion. I threw them in a drawer. 6 months later, I'm challenged to get those things back out. And I had to do it because I had to learn it. But I'm not a free motioner. But you got to do a little free motion here just to test it out. So you're just kind of going to go around in a circle. Do something. You don't have to worry about the rules of free motion. Now, did you hear that? I think you probably did. That means my foot is not low enough. It's not, it needs to go lower. So I'm going to go to the settings on my machine. You may not have these settings. Well, actually, I don't need to go to the settings yet. I need to loosen the foot and push it down farther. So if you have skip stitches, shredded thread, or nasty noise like you just heard, your foot needs to go lower. Your mind tells you that would be totally opposite, but that's what you need to do. So let's see if I can do it. Oh, that sounds really bad. Okay. Now I'm not just making a stage show of this. I'm showing you what you're going to encounter, because this is the part that once you get it solved, you're not going to have any issues. So let me go ahead, thread this again. Mine has an automatic threader, makes it nice. And you've got to put this through here. Now, some of the feet have slots in it that will make it easier. Pull that thread back up, do the same thing again. And let's see what happens this time. After you've done that, and it looks pretty good, and it's not giving me any nasty sounds or whatever, then you're simply going to take the first template that we're going to use, and we are going to just try a straight line. Now, this is kind of like the very first time you're saying, what? It won't matter. You're just going to lay it beside there. Oh, you heard it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to raise this. I'm glad this is happening, because I want you to be able to solve your issues if you have them. So make sure you've threaded it correctly. And quite honestly, I think that was missing a place. Got a little bit of lint there. That's another thing. Make sure you're cleaning your machine on a regular basis, because you're going to have a lot more lint just because of the fact that you're sewing a high speed all the time. So let's just see here before I change anything. Yeah, I think that just had missed a threading guide. And so once you've got this going like that, the last one you're going to check is stitching from lower right to upper left at a diagonal like this. And this is even what the long armors do, because that is the toughest direction to stitch. And you can see right there, I had that again. Now I'm going to tell you, this is a brand new needle before today started this, but I'm going to get another needle out, a brand new one, and put it in, because I don't want to waste a lot of time trying to figure out what this could be. And the first action is to get out a new needle. So make sure you have, it wasn't shredding, but you did hear it breaking there. So that's why I did that. Get your questions ready. Sarah can interrupt me at any time.
And we did have some questions.
Okay.
Let's see. Now, and you already addressed, I think we had a question regarding how to set your foot on the presser bar shaft. And I believe that was addressed. And Cheryl, if you still have questions, let us know. Let's see. What do you do if the thread broke every time you sew from down and up to left?
Yep, and that's what I'm addressing right here.
Perfect.
Yep.
And then we had one from a little bit a while ago. It was regarding the Circle Straits tool. It says, do you recommend placing it directly on the bed of the machine, or must you use the glider mat under it at all times?
You could put it right on the bed. I think the glider mat always helps, but that's just because it allows your fabric to go under there so smoothly. So yeah, you can use it that way. I'm not sure how well it's gonna. I've never used it on my machine directly, so I'm not sure how it's gonna, respond to getting it off and whatever. So.
Right, it is the Universal Circle Straits tool is nice and sticky. So
yes,
we do typically recommend using the mat, just nice and smooth, easier to reposition.
Okay, so while we were kind of answering questions and talking, I don't know, most of you probably were kind of paying attention. I actually took the foot and loosened it and put it back down and then tightened it. So now when I stitch that, this is the direction somebody was asking about. And if it was to the left. But you can see that's working fine now. It just needed to go lower. So I completely loosened it, pushed it down, and tightened it up. And we have, solved, it appears, the problem. Okay, so I'm going to cut that. And because this machine has its own foot, I'm going to take this off. You have to take it completely out. And we will put this foot on. And actually, taking this one on and off, I don't have to take it completely out. But just remember, don't force that screw in there, or you will have an expensive repair. And when you're putting this through, sometimes it doesn't want to go. It's grabbing on the bottom. Just do that and get a hold of this. I will tell you, you're going to start seeing me use this throughout, but this is the best type of tweezer. It looks like a little hockey puck. or not a hockey puck, hockey stick. And so that is one of the best to use. Now, we are going to go ahead and take what is, again, a great tool. So Steady has this. This is called a Clover Choco pen. And the reason we like it is a little bit later, I'm going to be using a tool that I will need to get it down into the grooves. Right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line beside it, and I'm going to draw across at a 90 degree like this. Now, you may have other types of Choco markers, but they're not going to have this dolphin tip. If you have this particular one and it doesn't fit in there, just get an acrylic nail file and file a little bit of this off on either side. Now, this chalk is okay, but it's not the best you can use. I have emptied mine and I have refilled it with what is called Iron Off chalk. It's by Pounce, and you want to make sure it says Iron Off. And I'm going to give you a quick little information here. This is a public service announcement. Never open the inside bag, okay? The inside bag has a zipper down here, and if you open it, you will never, ever get it closed again. Promise me. Or, yeah, I know. All right, so this is what I do. I take it to the bottom corner, and this one is brand new still. But I take it to the bottom corner, and I just cut off a small little tip, big enough to get a straw through. Now, let's see if I still have my straw right here. I don't see it, but there it is. I'm talking McDonald's straw. And I cut it down to about 4 inches. I stick it in that opening and push it down, and it'll fill up to about there. So you're just going to put your finger on the top. This piece will come off. You empty out what's in there, and then you refill it with this Iron Off chalk. And a little bit later with one of the designs, I will iron it off for you. So don't use the chalk that's in there unless you want to brush and brush and brush and still have trouble getting it off. The Iron Off only comes in white. If you want to have it so it will show up on lighter colors, you're going to take 2 teaspoons of this chalk, the Iron Off chalk, and mix it with 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Mix that up, get another color one of these, and actually empty out what's in it and put that one that has cinnamon in it. So that then when you mark it, you can see what you're doing. You can brush off what the cinnamon, just brush it off. I actually use, and I can't believe I don't see it right here, I use like a bathroom brush from the dollar store, and I just brush that off. A toothbrush will work, it just takes longer. And then you can press off this chalk. So that's a little bit about that. And I forgot to put my clip back in there, because what I do after I've done that corner, remember this is a new one, it's going to have just a little cut in it, and I just shake all the chalk out of it and turn this back and close it. And the reason I go through this is because the first time I did it, I looked like Frosty the Snowman when I got done. And I don't know if you've ever been a gymnast. I've not, but I got my experience of why they use chalk. It just kind of makes your hands cling to anything. So let's show you how we would follow this line. If you can see, I think you can, right down in the center there, I am straddling this foot. This foot is a 1/2 inch ruler work foot. So I've got a 1/4 inch from my needle to the edge on either side and front and back. So when I stick that in there so that I can see it right like that, I'm going to go ahead and put my needle down, bring my needle up, floss underneath there so I can get a hold of my thread. And I have now made sure that it's right on that line. Remember, I don't free motion or I'd be able to follow that. So now, since I said it's a 1/4 inch from the needle all the way around, no matter where I put this, it's a 1/4 inch away from the needle. Another tool that you're going to want to have, and this is the best way to hang on to it. I usually, when I'm doing this, I put this around my neck. It's called a notions necklace. This comes off so that I can use it. And this is my spacing gauge. We've got an eighth, a half, a quarter, and then a whole inch. And so again, I'll put that around my neck. I left it off so y'all could see what we got. And so now I'm just going to come down my line and put the edge of that and pull that in an exact quarter of an inch. So let's just go stitching. I'm pushing the fabric away from me. When I get to that bottom line, I'm going to take this tool. This is my 12-inch arc, and I'm going to put it right there to measure again. And I'm going to stitch right across there. Now I want to get back right to that spot where I began. So I'm going to set this side here against that spot because that's where I want my needle. And when I turn this up against there, I've now allowed from the spot I want my needle in to the edge of my ruler, the exact space that the needle is from the edge of the foot. Now, I can't just do it any old way. It has to be so that this side, which is the flat side, is right against my ruler. So I'm just going to take this and go like that. And now we're going to stitch right back to that spot. Now with this, I know this is a lot of information, and that's why we leave this up so you can see it. I'm going to get, that fell off. I'm going to get my needle that's self-threading. And Sew Steady has those on there. You can see here that there's a little hook in it to allow me to get that thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the needle up, the foot up, and I'm going to pull this back. And then I'm going to get a hold of this and bring that back, put the foot down, and put the needle exactly back in that spot and bring the thread up once more. So now when I bring my foot up, I am bringing up that bobbin thread. And that's the reason I kept two colors so you can see what's going on. And then the one that's still moving, this one, I'm just going to come close down here and cut it. I'm going to cut the one from my needle. And now what I have here are 4 threads. The two I started with and the 2 I ended with. And then all I'm going to do is take these 2 fingers and turn that around and put this tail up against and pull it through the loop. I'm going to take the point, go through the loop, and touch right back down to the spot that I had my needle in. And now I'm going to pull that down, and I'm going to stop and pull the needle out about 1/4 of an inch away. And you're thinking, why on earth would she do something like that? Because I want to pull that knot through. So I'm coming and getting this threaded. And sometimes a couple threads will come and you'll have to do, well, there we go. I've got 2 and 2 there. They're all in there. And so I want that knot to not be on top of my fabric. I want to bury it down in. So you're going to go through there, make sure you don't come out the back side. And I'm going to pull that thread. And I'm doing this slowly because I want to make sure you see what happens with that knot. So I'm pulling the tails through. It's still got that ugly knot right there until I give it a tug. And now it went in there. And the knot is not right here. It's actually about right there. So it gives you a clean look. I keep pulling on it because that's what I normally do. And then I pull it up so it's a little bit puckered there so that when I cut those threads, they go right back into my fabric. So now when you look at that, it's not like everyone is looking at that going, oh, she started right there, because the knot's there. It's now a nice, neat space. Now, if I want to echo on the inside here, I'm going to come down to the middle, put that foot down, put it right against the line. And now I'm going to put my needle down, my needle up, and pull up that bobbin thread. Put it back down and put the needle in. And I'm going to use the edge of my template right on top here. Now, one of the questions that probably someone is asking about is, how do I keep these stitches even? Well, when you start, don't worry about it. Okay? That's the truth. Don't worry about it. Learn to use your templates and the stitch length will come. Now, I'm going to give you a big hint. I like to set my machine on medium speed, turn my foot pedal on the floor around so that the back is closest to me, and then I simply use my toes and floor it. Because when you're flooring it, you're going to be able to forget about how much pressure you put on your foot control, because it's not going to go any faster than medium speed. So now when I start, I will get used to how I need to move this over time. But I need to learn how to guide my templates to begin with. Now, what are you striving for? You really want it to look pretty much like like a 2.2 would look. A 2.4 or 5 is a normal stitch length. A 2.2 is just a little bit shorter. And so you're going to just practice getting used to moving your template. And what I'm doing here is I'm stopping when my edge of my foot hits that line. I stopped over here when the front hit that line. And now I'm going to line it up on that line that's before. And I'm going to stop when this side hits that line. I'm going to come back in here and line it up and come right back to where I began. Now I would do the same thing, and I'm going to do just the first part again so that you can see it. Needle up, foot up, pull away, come back, needle back down. And then when you do this, you're going to, oh, I already did that, didn't I? Here we go. No, that's what I got to do. And now I'm going to pull up, and the one that I cut is the one that is still moving. This one here is the one still moving. Cut that, cut your needle thread. And now this is where you can go ahead, and you can see right there, it lined up it perfect. I just got to take these threads, might as well just do it. Flip that around, hold that in place. I have a little magnet up on my light bar that I keep my needle so that I can get to it very easily. Pull that down, let go, so it's about 1/4 of an inch away. Go right back into that same spot. You don't have to go straight. You can go at a curve, or not a curve, but an angle. Can't tell you how many times I've gone out in public with my Notions necklace, but I guess I can always take it off. But see how that just popped right in there? And now you can't even tell where that stops or it starts. It just makes it so easy. I didn't pull that enough. I'll just have to take my finger and put that through there. So that's the basics of working with templates. Okay. So this was our 12-inch arc. I may use it again today. I may not, but you can tell it's got a lot of lines on there. It's your basic tool. Everybody needs one. Now, another tool that you're going to get, and Sarah had shown you some of that at the beginning, I would strongly encourage you, to just go ahead and buy what's called the ruler work kit, because the ruler work kit has got everything you need to get started, and you don't have to keep looking for it. Oh, I forgot to get this, or I forgot to get that. It's going to have your spacing gauge, your templates that we're going to show you in just a minute. And this piece right here, this is what's called the crosshair grid. Crosshair ruler, same name, whatever. And you'll notice this one is what we call the 8-point. So I can mark 8 lines, 16 lines, or 32 lines with this, because there are extra spots. And you're going 32 lines. Well, believe it or not, as you get going with this, you will need those. See how that just fits right down inside these grooves? Makes it so easy. Only go once. You don't need it twice. And then you're just going to come here and you're going to cross right like that. Okay, so now, oh, I did miss one. If I needed 16, I would just rotate this so it was lined up that way, and then I get one in between each of those spaces. And you can just keep going and going till you get to 32. All right. So now we're going to use a design that actually needs a thumbtack to pin this, to use the template on. And your templates will come with thumbtacks. Okay. If you lose them, you'll get more the next time, or just go buy a flathead thumbtack. I need that thumbtack to come with a point up from the bottom. If I just go through here and fish around, I'm not going to get that. So what I can do is I can just put it through from the top, pull it out, go to the back, and push it back up. Okay. I don't much like those holes. So I'm going to take a piece of what's called RNK embroidery perfection tape. And I'm going to just put that right through there. And I'm going to put it on like that. And that way I don't have to put a hole in my fabric. Now, most places that sell embroidery products will sell this, because this tape, although it's good and strong, is much better than anything like frog tape or painter's tape or washi tape, or, oh no, not masking tape. Don't use it. But this is called embroidery perfection tape because it was used for, is used for in the hoop embroidery designs where like you have to add a zipper or a trim or something like that. So now that I've got that positioned, I'm going to get what's called my Spinning Wheels 36 template.
And we had a good question come through, Donnell. Is it better to use gloves with the templates or not?
I'm not a glove person. I don't need a glove. I don't necessarily, if you are used to using gloves, that would be fine. But to me, the gloves just get in my way. So it's totally up to you. So this is our 36 spinning wheel template. Let's just take a little exploration around this template. We've got the hole that it's going to go with the thumbtack. We got an A and we've got a B. We've got a straight line. We've got 2 diagonal lines. We've got some other lines. But today, all we're going to be using is the straight line and the hole to line up. Now, you'll see I'm using right here what's called a ruler sticker. And again, these are products that you can get right from Sew Steady. Ruler stickers come in a package of 3 different colors. And I will tell you, if you're template quilting, you're going to want ruler stickers because they're repositionable. Like I could take this one off. I just happen to leave it on there because this is the marking for a border that I do. So I'm not paying attention to it now, but later, if I have time, I'll show you that border. So I'm putting that thumbtack on there, or putting that on the thumbtack. I'm lining up here. Now, as you can see, we now have Spirograph for quilters. I'm going to lay this at the top. I'm going to pretend the first time here if I told you to draw with a pencil or an ink pen, you would come in here and you just draw around, and I say stop at B. Don't stitch between A and B. And that would be all fine. But now you've got a foot, and for some reason it's kind of scary, and you end up out here in the middle. Just keep in mind, stay against the template, push against the template. So when we get here, that's B. I'm going to use my other finger so you can see better. We just simply rotate the template over to line up with the next line. And look what happened. We're now at A again. We stitch, we rotate. So you obviously want to tell your machine, if it doesn't already do it, to stop in the down position, because that's going to save you a bunch of time. Now, if your machine does not automatically stop in the down position, only rotate your hand wheel towards you. Never turn it back, okay? Don't ever turn it back.
And we had a question, Donnell. Someone asked, are there non-slip grips on the back side of templates?
Yes, and I will show you one of the others since I've already got it in here. This is what's called stable tape right here. And that stable tape should go, like in this case, it's going to go on the back side. And the back side is the side that the words are backwards, and you can feel the etching. Okay. Now I've used, you can see this little puzzle piece. That's so if I just stitch through this, I've got one on there too. If I stitch around this and I want to stop but not break my thread, I can take that puzzle piece out, and I can then move through that gate and go to another piece and simply put this back. So there's a lot of lines on here. And right now you're thinking, do I have to pay attention to all of those? No, just like I was saying there. It's just on some places. Now, this is what's called stable tape. Okay. They come in strips like this. You'll get some with your templates, but you're going to always need more. So like the template that I just showed you, today, when I pulled it out, this one was hanging about halfway off because it's been on there for almost a year. And so I just decided to give this template a bath. So I took the stable tape off. I cleaned this with a cleaner that you can use on acrylics. And then after, well, it was on this side. And then after I did that, I just took it in and washed it in warm soapy water, dried it off because that got the lubricant stuff that I use off of there. And so now it's got new tape on it. So you're going to want some extra. So I just keep a couple of those strips right in front of me there. Now, one of the things that I think is important is to show you where to put that tape. So let me see if I can find a picture of that. I may not be able to find that right now. But you just want to make sure it's on your template where you're going to be putting your pressure on your, when you go to do your stitching. Can you believe
Donnell, I
that?
can share my screen. I have that document here.
Okay,
So I'll
that'd be
pull it up
perfect.
real
And you
quick.
guys may want to get your camera and actually take either when we show, yeah, right here, so that you can see I've got them on this side and I've got them on this side, so that way, once I'm doing one, I can flip it. This is the only template in the sampler set that is asymmetrical. So it's not, you know, when you flip this one top to bottom, it's not going to matter. That one it would. Thanks for sharing that document. I don't know, do you guys need it up again?
And that document, so if you end up purchasing the sampler set of 6, you're going to get a link to this where we actually have a promo going now. If you buy the sampler set of 6, you get the starter arc for free, and you get access to 6 different classes on the university, and one is Donnell's Let's Get Started class. And that stable tape layout for suggested location is included with that on the Sew Steady University.
Yeah, and those, you're going to get some great information in those classes. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to put the needle down, the needle up, just like I did, and I am right at A. Now I failed to mention, and I can show you this right now, A and B look like they just continue on. But when I put this down and put my needle, or not, I'm not going to put the needle in place yet, but you can see there's a stopping point right there and right there. So we can easily know when we get to that spot. Now I'm lined up back here. Put that foot or the needle down. The foot's already down. And we're just going to move around, hesitate at the top. Some people say pause. I like to use hesitate because to me that means you're still going, you're just going slow. For right now, I'm just going to cut this thread to get it out of the way. You've already seen me knot. And I'm going to turn this. Now, I'm going to tell you, this sounds like what your parents probably told you, no matter what age you are. When I started doing this, we did not have this crosshair grid that marked these lines, and I had to go off of those. And so when you would turn, you would kind of see, is that right over there? But you can see back here, it's not. So that was not as accurate as now that we can just line these up. I don't pay any attention to those anymore. And now we're going to go around this one. Stop at B. Move to the next line. So each of these is going to be exact. You're going to get back to where you wanted to go. And when we do this in a class, it's surprising how many people, we start with this very design, and how many people are like literally shocked at what they can do that they didn't think they would be able to do. And it's just a matter of taking those hints of pushing against the edge, slowing the speed down to medium, turning that foot around, and using all of the different little tips and tricks regarding thread and all that stuff, because there's your design. Now, if I went again, I could go and line up the diagonals and have one in between each of those. And I've got that stitch, so let me get that to show you. That's what it would look like. So you can see quite a bit of difference by adding just another round in between what you've already done. Now, some of you might be that person like me that's like, well, I can do that all at once. I'm going to do this one, then this one, then this one. No, you get a big mess here in the center. Now, I've got my iron over here, and I'm just going to get my little ironing pad so that I can take that off there and show you how easy those marks press out. And I can tell you, if I had a hassle of doing my markings, I'd never do the techniques because I don't want to mess with all of that. Another thing that I do use is the Frixon markers, not the pens, but the markers. And the way you can do that is if you will put 2 layers of starch on your fabric first. So you can either use the starch or the starch alternatives. And you're just going to put a layer on and press it, another layer and press it. And that creates a barrier between, I like to use the fine line markers, the Frixon fine line. That puts a barrier between the ink in that marker and the fabric. So when you go to iron it off, the fabric has not been penetrated with the ink. So you won't have that ghosting and all the things they talk about. But you can see there's a lot more that I can do with this. But you can see that there's a lot of options for your templates. I'm going to show you this one real fast because it just makes sense for you to see how many things you can do. So I'm going to take that line right there. And I'm going to start right here. I probably won't even pull my thread up just because it's not going to matter. Stop at the line. Line it up with my mark. And stop at the line. Lined up with my mark. And stop at the line. This is a good one for right now, you guys, because I think this looks like Hershey Kisses, a line of Hershey Kisses. So a lot of different things that you can do with the templates. Don't just look at that and go, well, what in the world can I do with that besides that? There's a whole lot of things. Sometimes I use this outside arc. So for example, let's just show you on this. If I put this right here in that corner, I'm going to line this up. I'm going to use my measuring, and I'm just going to come around that arc. I'm going to come across here. Come around that arc. Now, the thing that's cool about this is we have what are called stitching line discs. And these stitching line discs will allow me on paper to play with this. So let's see if I can real quickly get it. There we go. So this being the design, I'm just going to cut this so you can get an idea how we can work that design and add more to it just by using even another part. You could obviously use another template, but when I was deciding where to put that little mark there, I had drawn a straight line, just like I did with the chalk. And then I use what are called stitching line discs. And stitching line discs are 8 little discs with different size holes inside, but they're a 1/2 inch side to side outside. So they're the same as the bottom of your foot. So I'm going to use that one right there. The different size holes in the middle depends on what size of a pencil or a pen or a Sharpie or whatever you're using to draw with. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it like right here. See the base of that right there. And I'm going to take this and put it right in that spot and draw from line to line. And I only had to draw one to realize, well, that's not big enough for what I want. So then I moved it up. I did put the ruler sticker right there in case that was what I wanted. And then I put this here, tried it over there. And that's how I figured out how I was going to do my design. So this takes the space of your foot and it will allow you to do your designing. So I'm not going to draw that 8 point, but let's say we didn't use a pen and we just used the foot as our rotation. You can see now I would have drawn my crosshairs. Maybe this is a design that you want to do with that template. So having those stitching line discs, all of the educators, when we're drawing and getting ready for a class so that you can see what we're going to do, this is how we set it up. We use our stitching line disc to do all of that preparation. And it's great. They're not expensive at all. And they allow you to not have to stitch everything. You can actually just draw them up. Now, the next template, did you have a question?
We did. Someone asked, what's the difference between those Frixion marker pens and the Fritz marker?
I'm not for sure. I'm not familiar with that. I'm just telling you, don't use the ink pens. This is a Frixion ink pen. It has a metal tip, and that abrades the fabric. And so it definitely, the template goes down in or excuse me, the ink goes down in the fabric. So let's see, we got a lot of fun templates here in a short amount of time. So I'm going to extend this line here again with my chalk. And you'll notice that we don't draw out any designs. We just draw registration lines. And I can use the big one so that you can see it. The little one, I can get more of it. So I'm going to use the little one. And then I'll show you the big one stitched out. So I have lined up this template with that top line on that line. Okay, that will allow me from here to here is 1/4 of an inch. So when my foot bases itself right down in here, the needle's on the line. So we're going to line it up again. And if I want to stack these, which means I will get that clamshell, I stop at the top of a hill. I simply push this up and I put that top line now on top of the hill. So now you get more than a scallop, you get a clamshell. Now the same will look on the other side, and I'll show you. I'm going to cut this thread and I'm going to totally turn this around. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm real good with a template like this, but I'm not good with a template like this. I would be clear out here and down here. So do what you can do. I'm going to line up that line with the base of that loop. I'm going to line up this line right across from there. And I'm simply going to put that. I always put my foot down away from my template and then move my template in place. I'm going to pull up my thread, which I didn't do on the first one. And when you're practicing, it doesn't matter. That's why I love to have a cutter on my machine, because when I'm practicing this, I don't take time to pull them out and tie and all of that. This is a design called Egg and Dart. I guess I'm past where it was. And it's just done by flipping that around. And you can get that configuration. And you can do the same thing with the other side of the template. So this would be the first one I did. I put a little flourish in there. That's the big side. This would be the second one. So as you can see, you've got a lot of opportunity for one particular template. Now the next one I'm going to show you, because I'm just kind of giving you a sampling here, is the circle. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line this way. You can obviously do 8 circles. You can do all of that kind of stuff. But I'm going to show you something that I call my bubble border. So I'm going to take my, almost, I did pull it out. I thought I was pulling it in. Well, I should have rethreaded from there down.
And I just want to mention real quick, Donnell, I'm going to be doing all our giveaways at the end of the broadcast, so we get as much time to see you quilting as possible.
All right.
So if you haven't, folks, be sure to add a comment. Just say anything, and that'll enter you. I'm going to do some live prizes, and we're also going to do a prize from registrants. So if you didn't register, that's okay. Leave a comment. We'll do that near the end. Thanks.
Okay. So I've got that through there. I'm going to come into the line. needle down, needle up. And sometimes I even talk to myself just like I'm doing now. I'm going to come in there and put that needle right in the line. Now you can see I've got registration lines here, here, and here. So I'm going to use these and put them both on the line. And I call this my bubble border. It's a 2-inch circle. And normally that's where the circle ends. But in order to continue this without stopping and starting and stopping and tying knots and whatever, it's a template. I can get right back up there on top of that line without stopping and starting. So I move up. I'm going to go the other way because your eyes like things to balance out. And if I put all of the doubles down on one side, it will be heavy. Now, if you wanted that look, that would be fine. Now I'm going to stop here and show you how I can do that little eyelash look that I did on that other scallop template. So I'm going to pull this in until the acrylic touches the previous stitching. When it first touches, just stop. I'm going to pull this up and come about 3/4 of the way to that line. I'm going to push it in until it first touches. Come only about half. And I'm going to pull it in till it touches the first time and come about 1/4. So now I have added that little flourish in there by using the edge of this template. And then I can move on. I could decide whether I wanted to do every single one or maybe like every third one that we've done here. Now what I'm going to do now is I want to show you another really good investment, and that's what's called the Echo Guides. Now I just keep mine on one of these little silicone pieces that has magnets, and this is an Echo Guide. When you see the number, that's the way you're going to put it on the foot. Now what I used this for the other day is the top, I'm going to tell you, is a bigger opening than the bottom. And if you can't get it to stay on from the top, turn it over and try the bottom. If that doesn't work, take a piece of that embroidery perfection tape, put it across there, and just cut with an X-Acto knife and then push that tape back. And that extra bit of tape will hold it on there. I'm going to use the small one, the 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my foot, and that was with the button. I'm going to get a little extra lift with the lift in the back so that I can go right underneath there. And now I'm going to set that foot down, push down, and lift up. So now I got a bigger footprint. So I'm going to take my circle and I'm going to go up underneath. I got to go over it because I can't go around that. Used to sing a song in Girl Scouts, sounded about like that. Can't go through it, got to go over it. Okay, so I'm going to hold that and line it up, put my foot down, and now I have a smaller circle. So I guess you could build a snowman if you wanted to. But the Echo Guides work on a lot of the templates, not necessarily all of the templates. And if you use them on the outside of your template, let's say I wanted to make some frames. I'm going to just use this one because it has a rounded corner. Now I could use it with just the foot, but this is allowing me to have a larger one. So you can see how I just made that simple little frame there. So those are Echo Guides. And next I want to show you that spiral template. And that's probably about all I'll have time to show you. But that's gotten through most everything. The couple of the others are similar to the ones that we've just shown you. So you would just get a little different shape, but do it in the same way. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to take that crosshair square again. And these do come in a bigger size as well as more points. So in other words, you could have a 6 point that has 6 equal divisions, or a 5 point that has 5 equal divisions. And they come in 12 and a half, 8 and a half. And then we have our little minis that I absolutely love, because when I'm doing a small design, these come in a set together, the 5, 6, and 8, when you're doing a small design. And another thing is we have 2 sizes of what are called ruler racks. And like I take the rulers, I've been working on my Starry Nights, and these are the rulers that I needed for a particular design in Starry Nights. So I have them all right there in my ruler rack. And this is the small one, and it will hold, I think, 10 rulers. And the large one, I think it says 14, but I get more in both of them. So I just kind of cram them in there. All right. So what we're going to do here is we are going to use the little hook that's on the spiral template. And I'm going to put it right dead center. And I'm going to make it so that this is straight down. This side is parallel with it. And I've got this marked so I can decide which of these I want to put out there to go first. I'm going to use this one. And those markings are not random. This one is at like, I don't know, 2 3/4, whatever. It's the middle. And when you take a class that I use that in, you'll be told exactly. But I'm going to stitch out to the line. And obviously it's not lined right up with that because that's pointing to the line. I'm going to rotate this around and I'm going to allow 1/4 of an inch. Now, in a perfect world, that arrow would point right down that line. But we don't live in a perfect world, so we just want to make it so it comes back to the center. And then I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to line up that. And I'm going to stitch out to the line. Come back. Make it so it comes to the center.
We had a couple questions while you're making those beautiful petals. Does there need to be any adjustments made to the tension when setting up for quilting?
Honestly, if you've got matching weights of thread, you probably won't be making any tension adjustments. I would make sure I have everything else set correctly. Now, if you start using decorative threads, which we certainly, as you get better, you want to do that, then you're probably going to be making some adjustments that way. Now, I'm not going to do all of this as it goes all the way around. Let me see my sample. Here we are. This is what it would look like once I got finished with it, all the way around. I want to show you how to make it look like this. Okay, so it's the same thing as we did before. I'm going to line this up, but instead of being able to back this off because of the difference in this, we need to use a tool. And it just so happens that this foot, we want 1/4 of an inch away, So we need to use a 1/2 inch down here, because now when this comes up, it will be halfway in between. So down here, we used a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to go back. I'm going to stay the same measurements. From there is a 1/2 inch. Same measurements from here is a 1/2 inch. So you can embellish these on either side. If I wanted to do it on this side, I would take this and make the 1/2 inch here. Now, I think it's pretty on some to do both sides, but it can be a bit overwhelming if we did both sides on all of these. I just wanted you to see how we could do it on both sides. But again, you gotta measure. Now, you can see how you could do it on both sides. We could go the same side all the way around. You could alternate from one to one, whatever you wanted to do. But if you did it to get this one, you would only do one side, and that's what you would have there. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is I only did 3, but think about it. That's a triangle. So you could just do 3. If you wanted something that was half, you could just do that, because that's a triangle also. So there's a lot of ways. And again, that's where your stitching line disc, your pencil, and your templates on a paper really help you to get that design that you're looking for. So you can actually draw your space out and then practice in that space. So I'm just going to show you one more here. I'm going to do it on this side so that you can see, but we won't do the whole thing. This is the Spinifex 4. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up. I'm going to do this one. It won't look so good with the other one. I'm going to turn it around. I kind of like to do the opposites. And then I'm going over and do this one. So you can see you've kind of got a little pinwheel if you had this one in there. But then we can also go and do this right here. Now, is the Bloom template included in that kit now, Sarah?
Let's double check. So the Bloom template, that's a reseller exclusive, and you can purchase it from your local Sew Steady and Westerly reseller. You can't find it on our Sew Steady website. Please go support your local quilt shop and ask for the reseller exclusive ruler work kit, and then yes, the Bloom is included.
I just wanted to quickly show you then, this is the Bloom template. It's a super simple template to do, but you can get such pretty designs, and you're up to this. The templates don't just get harder. That doesn't make any sense. They get a little bit more involved. So it's still stitching with a needle that's going up and down, and you're moving a template no matter which one that you do. So last but not least, because this is not part of the set, but it's one that's kind of like, I guess the best way to say it, it is a bucket list template, and that is the feather template. And people think, oh, I'll never ever be able to do feathers. And this is one that I show at almost every single class, because of the fact that I want you to know that you can do feathers. Now we're going to do our feathers right here in this little frame. And I'm just going to take this and draw myself, not draw myself, but draw for me a straight line. And I do my feathers with what is called bunny feet. Okay, so our feather template, if I turn this around, it's bunny ears, but for me, that'll flop. So I need to do feet. And a feather template has 2 sides. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my needle right down in there, pull it up, pull my thread up. Oh, I hit the wrong button and cut it. All right, well, we won't pull it up then. There we go. And so I'm going to pull this in here. The word center is right there. And I'm going to put it so that it's right on that line. And I'm going to come around this way and drop back down to where I have got my arrow. I pull the template forward until the back of the template hits the back of the foot, line up my straight line, come back to the chalk line, pull forward. Only go back to the chalk line, because once I do 2 more feathers here, I'm going to go back up there and pick up all of those ends. So I'm going to put that right there. I'm going to take this and set this to the side of the foot. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch. I'll turn it so you can see it, so that I can line that up to come right back up there and pick up those tails. And then I'm going to come over here and reverse, but do the same process.
And Donnell, we had some good questions that came through. Someone asked, do you have any tips for holding and pushing the fabric? They mentioned their stitches are uneven at the moment.
Okay, so when I have my hands on here, you'll notice that it's usually a thumb and 2 fingers if I'm doing a symmetrical one. If I was doing one like this, it would just be this side. So right now where I'm at, I'm going to put this on the center, line it up with the back. And when I'm doing this particular design, I'm holding this. The stable tape is going to work no matter what. If I put pressure here, this stable tape is working. So when I put this on the edge, I've got part of my thumbs on my fabric. I've got a couple fingers here, but my middle finger is actually out on fabric. And then these 2 are out there. So when I'm pushing the fabric, I'm holding the template at the same time, but my fingers are actually pushing the fabric. Now, I'll tell you, I've had people that have struggled because they have a death grip on the template, and consequently the fabric doesn't seem to move because they've got too much of a grip on that. So just remember, you can get too much of a grip on there. So just, I kind of call it fairy fingers. If you just kind of lay your fingers down there, and that gives you the ease of that movement. Now that's my last one there. I want to get right back up there, and turning it sideways, I didn't really see it straight. So mine might not be exact when I get there. Uh-oh. Good time to stop, and my machine will not let me go one bit further when I'm doing that. So you can see, though, all of I have to do is finish that right there, and I've got my feathers. If you're doing it on a curve, we have what's called a spine that will give you that curve, whatever you want. Some people are good enough that they can just draw their own little curve and do that. The feather template set comes with a 2, 3, 4, and a 5 inch. This happens to be, believe it or not, the 3 inch. So they do get quite a bit bigger. So I hope you have enjoyed this today and have gotten you excited about template work. Or maybe you're joining us and you've been doing template work, but you just wanted to pick up on some of the tips. And definitely, those are the things that make template work fun, is knowing, just little hints as we go along. You're going to learn something in every class, because guess what? I learned something in every project. So with that...